Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of Paul's lectures on the meaning and potential of interfaith reflection and engagement. As Alan mentioned, my name's John Gordon. I'm the university chaplain, and also, more importantly, I am one of the few people here who can void a BW parking ticket if you have happened to receive one. That assumes, of course, that you've been able to find a place to park on campus, given our depleted parking situation. So if you've gotten a BW parking ticket, when you go out afterwards, see me, see Alan, see Carrie, or any of the people that we've mentioned that can help you make it go away. Unfortunately, if it's a Berea City ticket, you're on your own. You also need to know, if you haven't discovered them by now, that the restrooms are in the basement of this building. You can either take the stairs or the elevator that's just right around the corner here to get down there. And also, please, at this time, if you'd make sure your cell phones are on silent. Last night, Dr. Knitter invited us to join him on a rich and, I think, evocative journey through some of the minor theological topics, such as the nature of God, who is Jesus, and what happens to us after we die. He showed us how exploring the meaning of these potent theological categories through the lens of Buddhist thought helped him revise and reappropriate and deepen his faith as a Christian. As I listened last night, I was reminded of a quote that I collect quotes, and I stumbled upon a quote once that goes like this. The old divines talked about the gift of faith. It seems to me that there is an earlier gift, a desire, an openness to the light when and if it is offered. Last night, Dr. Knitter modeled for us how openness to the light, regardless of whether it's refracted through the lens of Buddhism or Judaism or any other religious tradition, can reveal and clarify and renew. As you know from last night, at the beginning of his own religious journey, Dr. Knitter told us he set out to become a missionary to convert all the non-Christians to Jesus. But along the way, through his own reading and writing, his life experiences, his teaching, and his lecturing, he came to realize that he was not called to convert people, but to play a role in helping them to awaken. I hope I can speak for all of us this morning when I say that we look forward to him continuing to play that role for us. So would you join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Knitter?
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And it's good to see you all again. Thank you for those who came back, and thank you for those who are here for the first time. It really was, for me personally, just a wonderful experience last night to be, so we didn't have a time to talk publicly, but talking afterwards with a number of you, and just the feelings I had as I offered you some of these perspectives on how Buddhism might help Christians be better disciples of Jesus, I just felt there was a real interaction. So I hope that can continue this morning, which we're going to be getting into a very different topic, though. And it will be, Alan, as you said, more like a seminar, but the topic is also much broader, and I can't say less theological, but more general. And it's going to talk about the necessity and the possibility of interreligious dialogue. Really, the proposal I would like to explore with you is rather preposterous, some would say. It is. Given the geopolitical state of our world today, given the role that the religions are playing in that world, and the role that many people feel they should play, let me see if I can get this. Given the looming necessity of turning the impending clash of civilizations into a dialogue of civilizations, particularly because of the violence on September 11th, 2001, and the violence that has followed September 11, 2001, The religious communities that populate our planet have reached, this is the point that I'd like to propose, that the religions have reached a point in their history in which they must find a new way of relating to each other, which will call for a new way of understanding each other. The religious traditions and the religious communities of the world are being called to dialogue with each other rather than compete with each other, rather than dominate each other, to collaborate so that all may prosper rather than compete so that one may win. So this requires that the religions lay aside or radically reinterpret their traditional and various ways of claiming, this is in Christian language or Jewish language or Muslim language, my God is bigger than your God. The religions have made that claim. Not just Christianity and not just Islam, Buddhism too. They can no longer continue to make these kind of claims of superiority that just about all of them have made throughout their history. This is why I said this is rather preposterous. The challenge that is facing all religious people and traditions can be compared, I venture to suggest, to the axial shift in religious history. Some of you may have heard about this, that the philosopher Karl Jaspers identified, and Karen Armstrong has been writing about. The Great Transformation, I think, is a book in which she does this. That just as there was a transforming shift in religious consciousness, this is what is claimed, I think there's reasons to affirm this, a transforming shift in religious consciousness throughout most of the world between the years 800 and about 200 before the Common Era. There was an axial shift, it's called. So today, there is a growing and a needed transformative shift which, though different from the one that took place then, will be perhaps as radical as that first shift. So in what follows, I would like to lay out first why such an axial shift away from domination and toward dialogue, so from domination of one over the others to dialogue among all, why that's necessary. And then I will try to explain why it's possible. Because a lot of people will say, well, it may be necessary, but it sure ain't going to work. I like to show that there are reasons where we can say, yes, it can. So, first of all, the necessity of dialogue. And I've got three general considerations, very broad, but I hope to give us something to talk about afterwards. The first, civil society in America, certainly in this country, in Europe, had frequent opportunity to stay in touch with the situation in England, Germany, and in Italy. But at least let's just talk about America. Since the European invasion of what the Native Americans call Turtle Island, as you know, that America has always been a multi-ethnic, multiracial society. But today, as Diana Eck shows in her wonderful book, came out about 10 years ago or more, titled A New Religious America, How a Christian Country Has Become the World's Most Religiously Diverse Nation. It's a wonderful book. The United States, especially after the changes in our immigration laws during the 1960s, has become and is becoming ever more a multi-religious society. This means that the citizens of the United States of America are called upon today to form not just a multiracial, we're still working on that, a multi-ethnic, but now more than ever, a multi-religious civil society. We have to work together as black and white and yellow, as Italian and Puerto Rican and Vietnamese, and now as Christians and Muslims and Buddhist Americans. Such a multi-religious civil society, and this is my point, demands more than tolerance of our religious difference, to form a working, effective, enduring, multi-religious nation, a multi-religious civil society, we have to not only accept our religious differences, we have to affirm them. That's the hard part for many of us. We have to not only put up with the reality that our next-door neighbors are Muslims. I'm saying our, speaking as a white Christian. I'm part of the majority. We have to not only put up with the reality that our next-door neighbor are Muslims, we have to be happy that they are. We have to see their Muslim religious identity not only as a fact of life, but also as a good, or at least as a potential good, for the life of our country. If we are going to be fellow citizens with our Muslim neighbors, we have to feel, I think we do, we have to feel that their religion is as valuable as ours. A diverse civil society requires not only an affirmation of equal rights of differing races and religions, but also an affirmation of their equal value. Therefore, to conclude this first point, let me just rub it in our faces, in Christian, especially white faces. I don't believe that we can have a functioning, prospering, multi-religious, multiracial society. I think you'll all agree on this one. We cannot have a functioning, multiracial civil society if one race believes that God has made it superior over all the other races. In other words, to believe in white supremacy is destructive of our democracy. I see a couple of heads nodding. But I believe the same holds for a multi-religious society. It will not function, it will not prosper if one religion, especially if that religion has a numerical and cultural and economic majority, if one religion believes that it is God's preferred religion. Christian supremacy is as dangerous as white supremacy. Let's talk about that. The geopolitical necessity of religious dialogue. Now, this gets a little bit more tangled. We come to what for me is an even more impelling reason why the religions are being called to an axial shift regarding claims of superiority. The link, namely, between claims of religious superiority and privilege and the calls to religious aggression and violence. I think there's a link. But notice I said link. I did not say trigger. I'm not suggesting that theologies that assert that one's religion is the only religion or the best will necessarily or automatically lead to violence in the name of that religion. I'm not saying that. I really do. The root cause of religious violence, violence in the name of religion, is not religious. Just if I may indulge in an extravagant generalization, bear with me, but I feel I can do this to get a friendly crowd. You'll tell me if you disagree. The usual cause of religious violence is, as it is for most international or intranational violence, economic. And I'm not a Marxist, but I do see the economic foundations for violence. Violence becomes necessary, a necessary tool, either to carry out and maintain economic exploitation of one group over another, or to resist and overthrow economic exploitation. You're either trying to impose it or you're trying to defend yourself against it. You either have power, actually I don't think I need that. If I do, I'll let you know. No, here it is. But if you are a racist demagogue who wants to maintain the exploitation of one race or ethnic group over another, or if you are a revolutionary trying to overthrow the shackles of slavery, it sure can help your cause if you have at your disposal a religion that holds itself up as God's only religion. as God's preferred religion and plan for the world. If you can tell your followers that they are advancing and defending not only their cause, but God's cause, God's ultimate vision for the world, God's privileged people, if you can do that, then you will be able to swell your ranks, not only with more soldiers, but with better soldiers. Fighters in state armies or resistant movements, whether in the ranks of Al-Qaeda or, or the Green Berets, who believe that God is with us and only with us, Gott mit uns, as the Germans had it on their belts in World War I. Then that they are struggling for God's truth and doing God's will to defend God's only religion or chosen people. Such soldiers will not only be braver, they also have the capacity to be more brutal. They're fighting for God, ready to give their lives as they pilot planes that crash into buildings or drop bombs on villages. As Charles Kimball has argued in his fine little book titled When Religion Becomes Evil, one of the principal reasons, though certainly not the only, why religion can so easily be enlisted to justify and intensify violence, or why religion can so easily be used to declare that the others, terrorists or imperialists, are the evildoers, while we are the good doers, is because of the way the religions have claimed to deliver the absolute or final or superior truth over all others. Absolute truth so easily, not necessarily, but easily becomes violent truth. So if we are to follow Rabbi Jonathan Sacks' admonition, the head rabbi of Orthodox Judaism in England, if we were to follow Rabbi Jonathan Sacks' admonition that unless religions are made into part of the solution for global violence, they will continue to be a major part of the problem of violence. If our religious swords have any chance of being recast into peaceful plowshares, we're going to have to do something, I think, about the way religious people, especially religious leaders, have felt the need to insist that they occupy the top place in the hierarchy of God's religions. Hans Kung's well-known dictum, I think many of you will have heard this, namely, he says, there will be no peace among nations without peace among religions. I think is as true as it is incomplete. We must add, and there will be no peace among religions without a mutuality of religions in which none claims to be superior over the others. That's quite an order to move that. Finally, here I can only broadly summarize what is slowly, all too slowly, and urgently becoming clear to religious people and to secular environmentalists. Namely, that if we are going to find a solution for what is perhaps the most menacing, really, and far-reaching of the global challenges facing humankind today, namely the possibility that human beings will destroy the life-sustaining capacities of this planet, then the religious communities of the world are going to have to make their contributions too. Let me just give you two considerations for this. First, on the part of religious believers. If the purpose of religion is to help people face the problems and sufferings of the human condition, I think we can all agree on that. Religions kind of are meant to help us deal with the problems of life. And if the environmental crisis is on the top of the list of our sufferings today and the threats that face us, then it is about time that the religions recognize that the one earth is calling the many religions to a new and mutually shared responsibility. One earth, many religions. Someone gave me the brochure for the talk I gave here back in 1997. That was the topic, one earth, many religions. See, I don't change very much. Anyway, to state it forthrightly and sharply, if any religion, now this is another, I love sweeping statements, so bear with me. If any religion does not have a message that can help us deal with the threat of ecological devastation, then that religion had best be assigned to a place in museums and history books. Such a religion that has nothing to say about the environmental crisis is no longer relevant. Or let me be a theologian and put it this way. Such a religion cannot come from God. Whoa. I said it. That's a judgment. I really can see that, or has lost touch with the God that if a religion cannot contribute anything to help us deal with the environmental problems. But now, on the other side, that's the side of religious believers, secular environmentalists are coming to the recognition, some of them are, more than before. Not the majority, I admit it, but more. Secular environmentalists coming to the recognition that the environmental problem is more than a secular or a technical problem. It is a spiritual problem. They are realizing not only that the environmental problem is often caused by religious beliefs, part of the mess we're in is because of religion, the environmental mess. Namely, when, if you believe that this world isn't our true home and we just have to, behave ourselves so that we can get to our true home, which is heaven and not this earth, or that after God created the world, he turned over the world just to serve us, human beings, that's part of our environmental problems. But environmentalists are also coming to see that the ecological mess we're in requires the help of spiritual values and beliefs. Let me explain to you. If we are going to really make the effort to save the earth and to subordinate our own, often consumerist needs to the needs of this planet, then we're going to have to feel the earth differently. We will have to feel that the earth is part of us and we are part of it. In other words, we're going to have to feel in some way that the earth is sacred. To perceive and feel and affirm our relationship with rocks and planets and animals is to feel that which connects them with us and grounds their value and their sacrality. It is to feel the sacredness of the earth, is to feel what religious people will call the spirit, the Tao, the Dharma, Buddha nature, Wakantanka, of Native Americans, the Lakota. That which grounds everything and connects everything and indeed makes us family. If environmentalists are concluding that in order to protect the earth, we have to love it, religious persons are suggesting that they can help in fostering that love. But, and here I get to the point, for the religions to make the necessary spiritual contribution to the environmental challenge, what is needed is not just that each religious community assemble its own environmental prophets and lobbyists. We need a joining of ranks, a common front built on common ground for an interreligious prophetic voice. The religions coming together to get each from their own perspectives, each with their own reasons and theological and religious reasons why the earth is sacred, why we must treat it, why we must love not just our neighbors as ourselves, but the earth as ourselves. This is what is called for I think in today's environmental crisis. One of the things, but I think a very important, if not essential, the contribution, the interreligious cooperative contribution to the environmental challenge. So, it's time for the religions to set aside their centuries-long agenda of competing with and fighting with and trying to replace each other and enter into a genuinely cooperative dialogue of equals. But is that possible? That's at least some reasons, again, to think why I think it is. Making a case that superior religious truth claims are dangerous is, one might observe, that's the easy part, what I just went through. It's a lot more difficult to argue that they are not necessary, that they do not have to be part and parcel of the way religions work. But that's exactly the case I would like to lay out for you now. I think there are good reasons why all religions, at least I'm speaking as an academic, I know it, but at least I think these are reasons that we can use from the pulpit. We can preach to people to show them that still they're good Christians, they're good Muslims, they're good Buddhists, even when they move away from their claims of being the final, the one and only, the only of God's religions or the highest truth. I draw these, I'm going to give you 3 reasons, from theology, from mysticism, and from psychology. Bear with me, I'll try to be as concise and clear as I can. So, theology. I think it can be shown, and I state this as a limited scholar of religions, how in all the religions of the world, nowadays in the academy you're not supposed to say all, ever. You don't make universal claims. I'm going to make one. Humbly, I hope, but I think that from the earliest so-called primal religions to the latest of the so-called world religions, I think Baha'i might be among the latest, there is the recognition that no matter how certainly God, or if you don't speak about God, ultimate truth has been made known to or discovered by them, no matter how certain they are that God has revealed God's self to us, or that Buddha has really discovered truth under the Bodhi tree, there is always, all of them admit that there's always more to come. There's more to be known. When it comes to God, there's always a surplus. Even though they don't all use the same word, all religions in one way or another, I think, some more explicitly, admittedly, and consequentially than others, affirm that they are dealing with mystery. Even my church, the Catholic Church, on the one hand says the Pope can speak infallibly, boom, but he's speaking about something that's mysterious, and so that we can never know fully. How the hell do you put, excuse me, how the heck do you put together infallibility and mystery? Well, that's a Catholic question. And this means that there can never be a final, full, unsurpassable revelation of what is mystery, precisely because it's mystery. No revelation, no religion built on revelation can say it all. There's always something else, something more that can be said. This does not rule out that some particular religious doctrines, hey, don't get me wrong, I'm not going into relativism here, that some religious doctrines or practices may be more accurate in describing mystery than others. Some of them might just be foolish and not have anything to do with mystery. That we find out by talking, by analysis, by discussing, by openness, by criticism. But while some particular doctrines may be more effective in putting us in touch with God and living out a life in union with God, what we Christians call God, still that does not allow for any religion in general, in toto, to say we have the one, the only, or, as Christians have, the full and the final truth. No one ever gets full or final when you're dealing with God. And I think when I say that, that's not me, Professor Knitter, speaking. I find that in my Christian tradition. As I just said, I find it in the witnesses, in the tradition, in the history of all religions. So I have a T-shirt that a New Zealand friend gave me some time back. I just love it. It says, has all the images of the religion on top, and then it says, God is too big to fit into any one religion. Isn't that beautiful? Profoundly true. Second reason why religions, if theologians tell us, as we just heard, that no religion can contain all of Holy Mystery, the mystics encourage us to find it in many religions. All the mystics, here I go again, all, You will find mystics in all the religions make the claim on the basis, they make this claim not on the basis of their logic or research, but on the basis of their own religious experience. I do believe that when you read the writings of the mystics in various religions, we talked about this yesterday in our student group, one of the things that becomes quite evident is that the more deeply mystics enter into the depth, now I'm saying mystics, I'm saying anybody who really enters into the experience that their religion makes possible for them, the more they enter into the depths of their own religious practice and beliefs, the more they realize that what they are discovering in their own tradition could not be contained in their own tradition. Consequently, their minds and eyes and religious sensitivities were open and eager to find that mystery elsewhere. This tells us that the deeper one enters into the experiential core of one's own religious tradition, the deeper you go, the more broadly and perceptively you're open to others. It's like if you, each religion, the image of it's often used by the mystics, each religion is a well. And the deeper you go into the well, you get down to the underground source, the river that's feeding your well, but then you realize that this is the source that is feeding other wells. And you're open then to explore, or at least to recognize the validity of other wells. Now, what I'm talking about is not easy to lay out, but let me give you an example. Thomas Merton is a clear and I think an inspiring illustration of what I'm talking about. In his early years, as many of you know, as described in his 7-Story Mountain, he has some rather denigrating things to say about other religions, Eastern religions. But as the years in the Abbey of Gethsemane passed, and as Thomas Merton sunk ever more deeply into the mystery of Christ and of his own oneness with Christ, the more he was able to perceive, appreciate, study, and engage in dialogue truths present in Buddhism, in Taoism, in Sufism. We have this body of works that he wrote. In his Asian journal, in one of the last talks of his life, he called for this mystical basis for dialogue. Let me just read this quotation from Thomas Merton. True communication between religions on the deepest level is more than a simple sharing of ideas, of conceptual knowledge or formulated truth. The kind of communication that is necessary on this deep level must also be communion. Communion, beyond the level of words, a communion in authentic experience. He, the monk, must be wide open to life and to new experience because he has fully utilized his own tradition and gone beyond it. Isn't that beautiful? He's used his own tradition to go beyond his own tradition. When you use your own tradition, you are, this the mystic's witness, you're propelled beyond it. You realize that there's more to what you've discovered in your own tradition than what you've discovered in your own tradition. Let me get back to Merton. This will permit him to meet a discipline of another, apparently remote and alien tradition, and find a common ground of verbal understanding with him. Close quote. Merton was not only a mystic, he was a prophet and opened up into religious dialogue for so many of us. Finally, psychology. In responding to the concern that if we remove, now this is the objection you get when you say you have to give up your claims for being the one and only or the truth, the final truth. If we remove this conviction that my religion is the best, we will diminish my commitment to it. We were talking about this before the lecture here with some of us. This is the topic we were getting at. In that, I appeal to what I think is the psychology of faith, or better, the psychology of trust. I understand an act of faith to be an act of trust. I ask those of you here to consider yourselves, those of you who consider yourselves religious believers, spiritual, trying to live out a spiritual commitment. To ask yourselves, just why are you committed to the teachings or the truth that your religion proclaims? Why are you a Christian? Why are you a Muslim? I suggest, now tell me if this is right, that it is because you trust that what you believe, what Jesus taught, what the Torah contains, what the Quran makes known, what the Buddha embodies, you really believe that that's true. You found that it makes sense for you, never fully, finally, you're always struggling, but basically it makes sense for the way you want to live your life. This is why you believe. This is why you're committed, because you find it to be true. If you're not absolutely certain of that, you trust it's working, basically, struggling. You find it to be, you're committed to it because you believe it's true, not because you believe it's the only truth. Is this, again, just asking you to look in, all of us. If the precondition for commitment were not just that we trust something to be true, but that we have the assurance that it is the only or the best truth, if that's what it takes to be committed, then I don't see how religious commitment would be possible. Or any commitment would be possible. If in order to marry my wife Kathy over 31 years ago, I had to know that she was the only woman I could ever marry, I never would have married her. It took me long enough to make up my mind anyway. So to give up claims that my religion is better than yours will not necessarily jeopardize my fidelity to my religion. Indeed, I do believe that religious commitment is a lot like marital or partner commitment, whether you're married or not, a real commitment to another human being. If the commitment is working, basically, they never work perfectly, but if it's basically working, if the truth and good that one finds in one's religion or in one's partner is real and life-giving, if the relationship, in other words, is healthy, then the encounter with other truths and other persons who are equally true and good, and maybe in some ways more attractive, will not jeopardize your original commitment. Indeed, such encounters with and friendships with others, what one learns from them will deepen and enrich, I think, one's primary relationship. Changing religious or marital partners usually comes about not because of attractions from without, but from problems within. And sometimes very real problems and understandable problems, but that's usually. So to be fully committed to a particular religious tradition, we have to have some assurance that it is true and good. We do not have to have assurance that it is the only truth and the only good. Commitment requires trustworthiness, not superiority. Well, winding things up. If the considerations I've offered you this morning make any sense, and we'll talk about that, that is, if it is true that there are great dangers for any religion to claim that it bears a God-given superiority and finality over all other religions, and if it is true that such assertions of superiority, although they have been made by all the religions in the past, are not necessary for the continuing life and vitality of one's religious identity and commitment, then it would seem that the religions of the world are being called together to engage in what might be termed an axial shift in the history of religions. I hope I'm not over-dramatizing this too much, axial shift, but call to a real change in their self-awareness and their attitudes towards others. Such a shift would be characterized by 4 qualities. Let me just run through them briefly. Humility. No religion in this axial shift will claim a general overall superiority over all others. In this new axial age of religious identity and relationships, No religion will engage other religions with claims of superiority, that is, with the insistence that it has a divine commission to remove or fulfill all other religions. Can Christians do that? Can anybody do it? But I'm looking at my own religion first. Secondly, but in this new period, religions will continue to make universal truth claims. Now, this is an important distinction. There's a big difference, I think, between the conviction that one has a truth that is universally meaningful for all other people, and so there's that one conviction, that what I have discovered in Jesus can be helpful and important for Muslims and Buddhists and Jews. That's universal. It's not, the truth that Jesus revealed is not just for Christians. If it's true, it has universal truth. That's one thing. But that's different from the conviction of possessing a truth that is absolutely superior over all others. The difference between universal claims and absolute claims. Religions cannot avoid making universal claims, it seems to me. In a sense, in one sense, all religions are missionaries. I know missionary is, for many people, a kind of a dirty word nowadays. No, I think all religions are inherently, in a sense, a missionary. They want to spread what they think is the good news they have been given or that they have discovered. But such good news will not be presented as the only and the final good news. Religions will share their good news, their distinctive truths. They will try to enrich each other as well as challenge each other. And they will allow themselves to be challenged by the others, by the missionaries from the other religions, so that there will be kind of a complementary fulfillment among all the religions through the mutual witnessing of what they believe to be true. Now, this is not going to work smoothly and neatly all the time. There will be differences, and we got to talk about them. But the big difference is that no one is saying, we know from God that this is the final word. To repeat, no one has the final word. And so I kind of touched on this. In this axial shift, individual religious believers will be as fully committed, now this is to their own traditions and beliefs as they are truly open to those of others. Now, is that psychologically possible? Can you be fully committed to your own and fully open to others? I'm stating it very kind of theoretically. On this personal level, the axial age will provide individuals the opportunity to pursue a spirituality that, while rooted in one religion, will draw on others to nurture, deepen, and expand one's own religious experience and understanding. This is what we were talking about last night. The possibility of real religious, interreligious dialogue, even to the point that for some of us it becomes double religious belonging. But this, again, is an opportunity made possible by what I'm calling this shift, this axial age. And finally, and maybe most importantly, a new globally responsible interreligious dialogue and a new dialogue of cultures will increase. But being religious interreligiously will characterize not only the life of believers individually, as I described last night in my own experience, it will more and more characterize the life of religious communities. There are signs that this is happening. This religions coming together to work on projects together. On the international level, in meetings such as the Parliament of World Religions, an encounter sponsored by the World Council of Churches, by the Vatican's Council for Interreligious Dialogue. These are some of those that I know. And even recently, this I discovered during the last 7 years I was living in New York at Union Theological Seminary, more and more the United Nations is trying to sponsor. They're very wary of this. They don't like to do it, to get involved with religion. But they're recognizing they've got to engage religion in their efforts for international peacemaking. There's just no way around it, as complicated as that can be. So people are working together on common projects, each on the basis of their own beliefs. These interreligious dialogues can take various forms. The Vatican Council for Dialogue, Interreligious Dialogue, talks about four general types of interreligious dialogue. The interreligious dialogue of life, that means just living together as people of different religions in the same neighborhood. The dialogue of study, where we actually sit down and study what the Quran says and look at our scriptures. That's a very fascinating thing. It's called scriptural reasoning. Thirdly, the dialogue of experience. This is more the mystical dialogue, where we actually share in each other's practices. And finally, the dialogue of practice, ethical dialogue. And that's what I'm talking about here. And the most urgent, one of the most. But the form of interreligious dialogue that is most vigorous, and I think most needed and promising, is what I'm calling globally responsible interreligious dialogue. This is the dialogue of action in which religions are recognizing that they do have a contribution to make to solving some of the global crises facing our world. Crises of human and environmental suffering, as we talked about, due to injustice and inequality. Well, that was going to be the end of my comments for this morning. But then postscript. Then I finished, well, I didn't really finish all of it, to be honest with you, this book. Robert Bellah, one of the best-known sociologists of religions of the past generations, Religion in Human Evolution, from the Paleolithic to the Axial Age. He means the Axial Age between 800 and 200 before the Common Era. That's all just up until 200 BC. But he has a conclusion at the end of this book, which when I read it, I said, oh my God, I'm in good company. He was basically proposing a kind of new axial shift. So I gotta share this with you, because it's so. So to my surprise and to my delight, I discovered that in his conclusion, he sounded this same call, but based on a much greater mountain of scholarship than I have been trying to make in this lecture. That he says that the religious history of humankind is on the brink of a new axial age. Here, let me quote him. He says, he announces the possibility of understanding our deepest cultural differences. I'm going to go back. This is not the one I'm giving you. The possibility of understanding our deepest cultural differences, including our religious differences, in a dramatically different way than most humans have ever done before. This is the possibility of understanding our religious identity differently than before. In the past and throughout history, each religion has claimed that it is the best. Here, let me quote. This is his. Each of them, the major religious figures of the first axial age, considered his own. We have records only of his. They're all males. No one wrote down what the females had to say. Considered his own teaching to be the only truth or the highest truth. Even such a figure as Buddha, who never denounced his rivals, but only subtly satirized them. He put them down. Plato, Confucius, second Isaiah, all thought that it was they and they alone who had found the final truth. This we can understand as an inevitable feature of a world so long ago. Now, you'd have to unpack that sentence. How can we understand it? What are the reasons for it? I mean, it'd be interesting to talk about it. But then he goes on. Today, Bellah announces that we have begun to see the emergence of a new point of view, one that could understand and appreciate all religions on their own terms, and that was not driven to set up one as the apex, either because it was the best or because it was the most historically progressive. And then finally, he writes, this is the one, what I am thinking of now, and he died shortly after finishing this book. What I am thinking of now is the increasing number of serious students of religion, he's still writing as an academic, who can accept religious pluralism as our destiny, there will always be many religions, without making a claim to the superiority of one tradition. That was his, in a sense, his final message. One of the greatest scholars of religion of this past century. But is this prospect of a new axial age in which religions will give up claims of having the only or the superior truth meant to supersede all others, in which they will truly enter into a collaborative dialogue in which each learns from the other for the well-being of all? Is such a vision a dream? An impossible, unrealistic ideal? Something that, concoct in a university, but it ain't real in real life? Is it worth one's energies to try to bring about this new axial age in one's own religious community? I really don't know. Maybe it's a pipe dream. But I've been at it too long to give up now. And I hope that many of you younger people in the audience may someday say the same thing. Thank you very much.
Let me just pick that up there as we get ready to enter into a period of some questions and hopefully some more elaboration, particularly that last point when he talked about some of the younger ones in the audience. I was musing, we're only 5 years away from the entering freshmen coming to BW having been born this century, so talk about the last century is going to be irrelevant to them. Most of the incoming freshmen this year were born in 1995. I have a 6-month-old grandson in D.C. who only has to live to be 87, and he will make it to the year 2100. So that's why I think it's really important that we have somebody like Paul Knitter here today talking about this kind of stuff. It's not for me and for the rest of us who have gray hairs. It's for my grandson in D.C. who, if he makes it to 87, will have to live out this stuff. And there's either an incredible promise in what Paul's doing, or there's really a heightened peril that really won't be my problem, but it will be the problem for the row sitting there that's way younger. I was also thinking a couple observations. I'm going to ask a question which gives you time to concoct a real question. For those of us who go across town or even to Strongsville or somewhere to UH or Strongsville, do you not think that the whole medical world is not already living out this interreligious phenomenon? I mean, what's the chances of just getting a Catholic doctor or a Hindu nurse? I mean, we have this world in Cuyahoga County. We can go to a Hindu temple, a Buddhist temple, a Jewish synagogue, incredible mosque, a Catholic saint, somebody, and we don't have to leave the county. This is our life today. It seemed to me he was talking about both the environment, the earth we live upon, and the people with whom we are related. I'd like to ask the first question, Paul. You talked about the environmental or ecological concern also being a spiritual one, and you used a phrase something like we have to learn to feel the earth differently. Could you elaborate a bit on that? I'm not sure how to start feeling when I walk outside.
Okay, Alan, I'll help you with your feelings. Typical male problem. No, it is, though, this is something that came up in one of the Earth conferences And remember, it was stated by actually the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Boutros Boutros-Ghali, the Egyptian, where he, at that Earth conference, I forget just when and where it was, but he said, really, we have to start feeling a love for the earth that we feel for other human beings. I mean, that there's something, it'll be a different kind of love, but it's got to be, get beyond, just as, I mean, this is a little bit maybe too technical or too verbal, but just as, in our personal relationships where we're trying with the help of Martin Buber, it's not, no human being should be an it, every human being should be a thou. That somehow the earth has to become a thou, a you, a different kind of a thou. And now what is where we feel that it's not just a dog. Dogs are easy. It's not just a beetle. It's not just, make it hard. It's not just a cockroach. It's not just a microbe. But it's not just a rock or a tree. But that somehow these two, they share in the general, the all-pervasive reality now, and I'm putting it in Christian terms, these two are emanations, no, that's not so Christian, it's more Hindu, emanations of God. These two are, all of this is God's creation, and we have a responsibility to it. So, I mean, it's something that can come about through spiritual practice, but I think science is so integral to creating this new spirit, this I-thou relationship with the earth. But that's spiritual stuff. When who's the scientist at Harvard, the ant specialist, Wilson? When he starts talking about in this way that we have the sacrality of the earth, he recognizes he's getting beyond his work as a scientist, as the way that science is understood. And this is where religions, I think all religions, you're not going to say that the Bible or the Quran has an ecological theology. It doesn't. But it's got the potential for Muslims and Christians now to develop an ecological theology from the witnesses of those scriptures. We're always interpreting our scriptures. But this is the role of religions, to help people who call themselves religious also feel the sacrality, the sacredness, the thou-ness, if we can, put it that way, of the earth. And that's a job for all of them together.
Thank you. Okay. Good question.